This review is for a musical that addresses issues of repression, sexual assault, and substance abuse. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm going from a musical that played at the Marcel a month ago to a musical playing at the Marcel right now. Isn't it ironic, don't you think? Hello folks, and welcome to Jack Reviews Musicals. My name is Jack, and I'm a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri. This is my YouTube channel where I share my thoughts on all of the musicals that I see in the area. And the wonderful people at Tesseract Theatre invited me to attend their opening weekend of Jagged Little Pill, which is currently running at the Marcel Theatre from now until the 26th of July of 2026. Piling on with the coincidences, Jagged Little Pill, like We Will Rock You, is a jukebox musical. And it's the kind of jukebox musical where the story is inspired by the songs. In Jagged Little Pill's case, this uses the catalog of Canadian singer-songwriter Alanis Morissette. And unlike We Will Rock You, Jagged Little Pill is decisively not a comedy. If anything, it's more similar to Green Day's American Idiot, in that Jagged Little Pill utilizes the entirety of Alanis Morissette's alt-rock album of the same name, the singles from which are still getting radio play 30 years later. And for good reason. Jagged Little Pill is a legendary, generational record. It's a landmark of where culture at large was in 1995. Pain and angst, love and chaos. Not to mention, the songs are absolute earworms that get into your head like nothing else. Unlike American Idiot, the songs in Jagged Little Pill, the album, were shuffled around from their original order to fit the stage show. There are also a few songs from the rest of Morissette's catalog that expand the show to theatrical length, including 2 dream ballets that Morissette and her producer Greg Ballard composed specifically for the show. The musical Jagged Little Pill premiered in 2018 at the American Repertory Theatre in Cambridge, with a production directed by one of my favorite currently working directors on Broadway, Diane Paulus. That world premiere production became the most successful and longest running musicals in the history of ART, running for nearly 80 shows that were all sold out. It transferred to Broadway in 2019, only to be stymied by the pandemic in 2021, after 170 regular performances. But that did not stop the show from winning 2 Tony Awards. The first was for The Book by Diablo Cody. She made her musical theater writing debut with this after establishing herself as an icon of third-wave feminist cinema, having written the screenplays for the films Juno, Jennifer's Body, Lisa Frankenstein. Honestly, that made Diablo Cody and Alanis Morissette a perfect match. The other Tony was for featured actress, going to Lauren Patton for playing a character who was technically non-binary, even though Patton is a cis woman. That was the big elephant in the room going into Jagged Little Pill. The original Broadway production got a lot of flack for this, and instead of recasting the role authentically, they just changed the script to make the character cis. And in her Tony acceptance speech, Patton thanked her trans and non-binary friends, which was not a good look. That put a pretty big stain on the show's reputation that hasn't quite been removed, even after the apologies, and even after Diablo Cody had the wherewithal to reinstate the non-binary representation in the licensed version, which is being presented for the first time in St. Louis by Tesseract Theatre, in a production that really shows how shameful it is that this controversy has caused Jagged Little Pill to be so underrated, because the fact that it is underrated right now is criminal. Jagged Little Pill is set in modern-day Connecticut. It's Christmas time, with the Healy's, a seemingly perfect, well-to-do white suburban family. Parents Mary Jane and Steve, their son Nick, and their adopted African-American daughter Frankie. The show begins with MJ narrating the family's Christmas card, where she talks about some recent happy developments in the family. Steve got a big promotion at work, Frankie's become a published artist and poet, and Nick just got accepted into Harvard. For her part, MJ got into a car crash, and she's recovering from it via natural remedies. But that's what she only wrote on the card. For you see, this opening is set to the song Right Through You, and we see exactly how the Heelys actually are. MJ is not satisfied with the natural remedies being peddled by her mom's club, and so she becomes addicted to prescription opioids, to the point that she starts getting back alley pills once her pharmacy legally can't refill her anymore. Steve's hike in work hours has caused a strain on his and MJ's marriage. Their lack of physical intimacy has resulted in Steve becoming a chronic masturbator with a hardcore porn addiction. Frankie is a progressive activist in a same-sex relationship with her classmate Joe, who's non-binary. Behind Joe's back, Frankie sees on the side another classmate, Phoenix, a boy who, like Joe, bonds with Frankie over their shared difficult home lives and progressive beliefs as well. MJ is a devout Catholic, so her religion is constantly clashing with Frankie's very identity, making Frankie feel like the scapegoat to Nick's golden child. And Nick in turn is resentful towards everyone around him for demanding that he be perfect all the time. The song Perfect even represents this. The plot of the show gets rolling when, in an act of rebellion, on the last night before the start of winter break, Nick goes to a house party hosted by his fellow preppies. And it is a wild holiday party filled with all of the typical underage drinking, sex, and drug use expected of unsupervised teens. Nick gets drunk, and in his haze, he fails to act when he witnesses his friend, Bella Fox, being sexually assaulted. Revenge porn of Bella's assault is posted online. Nick's culpability therein is discovered, and it sets off a snowball effect that causes all of the mounting pressures and problems that the Heelys have been facing to finally come crashing down on them, to the point that the family completely breaks, and in different ways for each of them. After that happens, we, the audience, get to watch them pick up the pieces, one by one, and it is not easy for them at all. It's an extremely blunt story about the dark side of American suburb culture. Jagged Little Pill realistically shows how the belief system of conservatives will teach you how to repress sex and gender and trauma, diversity, inner turmoil, access to information, and that can lead to people doing horrible things like assault others, develop addictions, unhealthy habits, antisocial behaviors, toxic relationships. There are incredibly frank discussions in this show of religious trauma, sexual trauma, society's perception of rape victims, the injustices that rape victims are constantly experiencing, injustices experienced by the LGBTQ+ community, performative wokeness, gender roles, the stifling of personal expression, the pressures of being a gifted child even, fear of intimacy, substance abuse, how big pharma is the root of our country's problem with opiate addiction. 5 points if you get that reference. Jagged Little Pill is a heady show. It tackles a lot. But on the flip side, it also deep dives into systems and mechanisms that the Heelys find to help themselves become better people. Transparent communication, therapy, rehab, cutting off toxic people. Just straight up using common sense. So it's not doom and gloom all the way through. A lot of it is very positive. There are also moments of fun family bonding, queer joy, honest conversations about wanting to heal yourself from trauma, about wanting to rebuild burnt bridges, and even a bit of dark comedy, where some of it can be pretty groan-worthy, but it provides a nice levity from the seriousness. It's an optimistic show, Jagged Little Pill is. It's about perseverance. It's about living with failure, about finding value in imperfection, supporting people who are struggling just by being there, about finding the energy to move on and keep evolving. Even the ending of the show doesn't go the way that a typical musical ending does. For the main characters, things are never going to be perfect, but they're never going to stop fighting for things just being. And I think that's a conclusion that people are going to find more engaging on a dramatic level than if every conclusion to each of the characters' arcs were outright positive endings. To top off such an engaging, progressive story, the way that Alanis Morissette songs are incorporated into it is just brilliant. Never at any point does Jagged Little Pill feel like a story with pop songs tacked onto it. The songs were thoughtfully placed, carefully arranged, creating an engaging story that puts you on the edge of your seat. From the overture's opening harmonica solo, to the captivating dream ballets, to the full-on protest of the song No. At Tesseract Theatre, Brittany Gunn's directing is first-rate. The performances that she draws from the cast are intensely realistic, the blocking is captivating, particularly in the fantastical moments like MJ's song, Smiling, where she sings about how she's keeping up appearances through her pain. She literally rewinds and replays her day, with the actors portraying the people that MJ saw that morning, going through their emotions in reverse. The choreography by Ella Drake and Ruben Medina has the ensemble performing modern pop vocabulary that is very exciting to watch, particularly in You Oughta Know. The dream ballets that reenact Bella's assault and then some were inspired. There's also great movement work from intimacy consultant Will Bonfiglio and fight choreographer Rhiannon Creighton. Leading the charge of this cast is Lauren Goudreau as MJ. MJ is a great protagonist. She's a mother who needs to learn that her pursuit of having the perfect family is actually very destructive. The story of the Healy's in the show is very similar to the story of my own family, the difference being that by the time my own mother made the discovery she was destroying her family from the inside, it was too little too late. So to see a character like MJ experiencing that journey and having the happy ending my mom never got, that was very healing. And Goudreau's performance masterfully, accurately captures how a mother like MJ would act. The judgmental attitude, the passive aggression, the frustration and anger when people fall short of her expectations, the emotional numbness of constantly being in pain, the shakiness of having to face a mountain of insecurity and trauma, and it's all balanced by a tenderness and vulnerability that makes MJ a character that you feel sorry for, and one that you subsequently want to root for. Goudreau's vocals in Smiling and Uninvited especially evoke a lot of sympathy, and solidifies for me her role as protagonist. But my first hint towards that discovery was the dynamic between MJ and Frankie, who is played at Tesseract by Kenya Kairigi, making her professional theater debut with this performance. And she is a knockout. Kenya Kairigi makes Frankie's pain of being the literal black sheep of her family achingly real. Her progressive beliefs are felt with conviction, her reactions to Bella's assault, her family's dysfunction, and her disconnect to her own lineage are passionate and angry. Kairigi's renditions of All I Really Want and Unprodigal Daughter are belted out with a sharp edge. This role was such a strong debut. Kairigi's chemistry with her scene partners also feel effortlessly natural, particularly with the characters that are in her love triangle, Phoenix and Joe, played here by Jabari Boykin and Milo Garlich. Jagged Little Pill will actually be Jabari Boykin's last show in St. Louis before moving to Chicago to pursue a musical theater degree. And boy, oh boy, I'm gonna certainly miss him, because he has given us really incredible performances in his pro career here so far, with Phoenix being no exception. Boykin playing a high school senior just after his own senior year was a brilliant stroke of verisimilitude. He gives an unpretentious performance that navigates Phoenix's angst, intelligence, and sensitivity with a nervous energy that plays very well against Kairigi's confident Frankie. Their chemistry together was flawless. Their voices blended together perfectly, and their romantic duets ironic and head over feet. But the one who truly shines here is Milo Garlich's Joe. Again, I loved that sense of authenticity from Tesseract casting a non-binary actor in this role. Doing this gave Garlich so much room to create this version of Joe that was so compelling. They exuded confidence in their own identity, which is made clear in Garlich's easygoing vocals and Hand in My Pocket. And that's not to mention the explosion of jilted rage that they hurl at Frankie for seeing Phoenix behind their back, expressed in Garlich's show-stopping, emotional, tour-de-force rendition of You Oughta Know, the most iconic song in Alanis Morissette's catalog. This is also the third musical that I've seen a Milo Garlich performance, and I think they really came into their own in this. Them, Kenya Kairigi, and Jabari Boykin are all stars in the making. These three are names to watch out for sure. Another actor who I feel really comes into their own in this is Lauren Tenenbaum, who plays Bella. And she clocks in. She gives what is possibly the best performance that I've seen from her so far. The sheer honesty of Tenenbaum's performance makes Bella's arc from being this confident, popular girl to being absolutely shattered by her assault and then fighting for justice is made so compelling, particularly in her songs Predator and No. And I especially love how she is used next to Lauren Goudreau's MJ through Brittany Gunn's directing, cleverly using the Dream Ballet to connect the two of them in ways that were very magnetic and dynamic. Kevin O'Brien as Steve is outstanding, having to shoulder the mystification that he feels of the family being distant from him, and the guilt of his porn addiction. And O'Brien handles it all with a realistic levity that gets kind of dark sometimes. The performances from O'Brien and Lauren Goudreau were so full of conviction that the marital squabbles that Steve and MJ get into feel like full-on fights. O'Brien's turns during So Unsexy and Mary Jane were so well done. Kevin O'Brien's real-life husband, Stephen Henley, plays his on-stage son, Nick. A kind of casting that gives me 90210 vibes, but alright. Really, Henley's age is only a slight distraction from what is really a great performance. Henley makes Nick feel all of the anxiousness, all the pressure, all the conflict of not only having to be constantly perfect, but also the guilt from not doing anything to help Bella, except for coming forward as being culpable, which is evidenced by his, at turns, loving and frustrated chemistry with Lauren Goudreau in scenes that definitely hit close to home for me as someone who, again, has a very similar life story. Henley's singing of the solo Perfect was heartbreaking in how relatable it was, to the point that he almost sounds like he's in pain singing it, which is as it should be. The principals are backed up by a killer ensemble of 8 actors playing multiple roles: students, parents, teachers, all of them excelling at performing the movement without breaking a sweat and singing these driving rock songs sounding like a legit Broadway cast. At the performance I attended, ensemble member Clayton Humberg was absent, but his track was pretty seamlessly covered by the rest of them. Lillian Cooper and David Hall were astounding as the featured dancers of the Dream Ballet. Scott Deacon's Freeze was a standout, playing some of the mature male adult roles. And there's great support from Kiera Anderson Pittman, David Joseph, Isha Ved, and Devin Phoenix Yakel. As I kept saying, the score and these voices are amazing. And it's all thanks to the incredible work of musical director Leah Schultz, who conducts Tesseract's 7-piece symphonic rock band with gusto and precision. Schultz leads the band on the keys and even gets the chance to channel her inner Alanis a little bit with some killer harmonica solos, including the very first notes of the overture. If that's not enough to get you pumped up for the show from the jump, I don't know what is. At Schultz's side are the rhythm section, Adam Rugo on guitar, Michaela Cuba on bass, Jake Lubert on drums, and the sumptuous strings section, Jill Hamill and Mallory Golden alternating on the violin, Chuck Evans on the viola, and Micah Bounds on cello. The cast and the band perform up against Todd Schaefer's set design that turns the Marcel Theater into a literal broken home. The band sits behind a white picket fence with minimalist scenic elements that create the impression of a house. Some of these elements, as well as two large pieces of rubble resting on casters, get rotated around to switch between locations. The Healy's home, the school, the party, the pharmacy, the coffee shop, the hospital, and the platforms are set on either side of the playing area so that the actors have room to dance around and play a bit. There's also a couple of points in this where the rubble's positions conceal very specific actions and states of the characters in the show. I'm not going to spoil them for you, but when you see them, you'll see how very clever and well done they are. Thick white lines are also painted all over the playing space in sharp vermiculate patterns, simulating the look of broken glass, almost as if we're seeing the Healy struggles through a broken window. The set even incorporates a working tire swing that gets played with in a couple of scenes. The impressionistic roof on the set also has LED lights tacked onto them, and they're effectively used by lighting designer Kevin Bowman, creating some rockin' atmospheric lighting. Standouts being Smiling, The Party, The Dream Ballet, You Oughta Know, and Mary Jane. The final creative element I have to mention is Sarah Jean Dowling's costumes, which were wonderful. The cast is dressed pretty much entirely in casual street clothes. They establish the personalities of the characters incredibly well, telling their story through fashion, including some pretty good use of band t-shirts. And the cast actually looked comfortable moving around in them, fitting the demanding movement vocabulary to the point that I never saw the cast members fighting with their clothes once. And for costumes that are street clothes, that's hard to do. Everybody involved with Tesseract Theatre's production of Jagged Little Pill really came together, and they created what is possibly one of the most thrilling, exciting productions I have seen of a musical that premiered in the last 10 years. Jagged Little Pill is the kind of musical that Tesseract was made to produce. It's one that screams, yes, I'm a modern musical. I can appeal to the modern person living in the modern world right now. Come and watch me. Tesseract lives, survives, and thrives on shows like this. We need to see musicals like Jagged Little Pill. We need musicals that are, as the kids these days say, a lot. It's messy, it's raw, it's goofy sometimes, it's emotional, it's intense, it fires on all cylinders, it's human. Jagged Little Pill has the potential to save lives. Honestly, if it weren't for Broadway fumbling the bag like it almost always does with modern musicals, Jagged Little Pill could have been the next to normal or Dear Evan Hansen for the 2020s. A realistic, engaging family drama with a genuine rock score filled with one banger after another, with opportunities to create visuals that are a feast for the eyes, and an ending that speaks of promise for the future. Kudos to Tesseract Theatre for giving us a production that did all of that, presenting Jagged Little Pill with the love and care needed to make us see its greatness. Hopefully, if we keep up the good word of mouth from here, we can turn its wider reputation around for the better. Did you see Tesseract Theatre's production of Jagged Little Pill? If so, what did you think about it? Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more St. Louis musical theater reviews coming soon. Thank you so much to Tesseract Theatre for inviting me to see their production, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, long live the musical!